From worst to best, Shovel Knight bosses. Shovel Knight was easily one of the best games of 2014 and provides a perfect mix of a retro feel with a modern flair. The level design, music, and characters blend amazingly, and the folks at Yacht Club Games clearly want to put out the best content possible. So on this episode, we are ranking all of the bosses in Shovel Knight from worst to best. This could get complicated because almost every character is phenomenal. So as usual, here's how the bosses are ranked. Number 1, the battle itself, how it plays and its strategies. Number 2, how does the battle affect the main character at the time of the fight? Number 3, the lore behind the boss. And number 4, the boss's design and setting. As usual, name pronunciations may be different than yours. Also keep in mind that Kratos and the Battletoads are being omitted from this list, and I am instead only keeping the bosses available for everybody to face. So now, let's get started with the boss battle that is ranked the lowest. The Big Creep. This massive ghost is an optional boss found in the Haunted Hall of Champions. Shovel Knight needs to utilize light orbs in order to damage this big creep. He will eventually attack with other ghosts and projectile skulls, so juggling the light orbs for protection and attacks is a must. At this point in the game, Shovel Knight is skilled enough to take this guy out fairly easily. Because this game has such great bosses, the big creep is unfortunately not very memorable. Baz.
The big guy.
Baz is another optional boss in the form of a wandering traveler. This intimidating figure doesn't seem to be quite there psychologically, and after getting denied membership of the Order of No Quarter, decides to attack passing travelers. His whip attacks and electricity may be intimidating, however Shovel Knight is far more skilled and is able to out-strategize this brute. And it turns out, Baz is quite the baby. Tinker Knight. Tinker Knight is the least physically menacing member of the Order of No Quarter. However, what he lacks in physical strength, he makes up for in intelligence. His first phase battle is actually kind of tricky if you aren't careful. He hurls wrenches all over the place. You can take him out with one hit of the mobile gear, but where's the challenge in that? I actually find him more difficult than his second phase and his massive destroyer tank. The tank is more for intimidation than anything anyway, as Shovel Knight is able to figure out a pogo pattern to damage the devious little knight. Their second encounter with the Order of No Quarter Gauntlet battle can be frustrating on Game Plus mode, because Shovel Knight has to do double duty with Tinker Knight without extra health. However, knowing his patterns makes it easy to take him down. Rise. This young and somewhat naive warrior has good intentions, but not a lot of experience. He mistakes Shovel Knight for a villain and uses his 2 boomerangs to attack. Once he is damaged enough, he uses a flame barrier that needs to be taken out before he can be defeated. The battle is more of a friendly misunderstanding, and Shovel Knight is careful to keep a knightly bond after the battle. Polar Knight. The solemn warrior of the stranded ship Polar Knight is an old acquaintance of Shovel Knight. However, their tension didn't feel too drastic. It would be interesting to see him fleshed out in the future. He has a cool Viking design and a snow shovel for attacks and defense. He is seemingly the strongest in brute force of the Order of No Quarter, and has an almost kind attitude for the most part. The reason he ranks so low is because his battle strategy includes a one-hit spike kill, which is pretty lame, especially in the Gauntlet battle. Remnant of Fate. The final boss of the game and the essence of evil from the Enchantress takes on the team of Shovel Knight and Shield Knight. This battle is more of a cinematic and dramatic showing than a test of extreme skill. Shovel Knight needs to bounce off of Shield Knight's shield in order to attack this ferocious beast's head. Using the Propeller dagger makes this battle almost too easy. However, the creature's menacing design and the fact that you team with Shield Knight makes it pretty fun. Mole Knight. Deep in the Lost City, Shovel Knight battles the mighty Mole Knight. This is a fast-paced battle where Mole Knight is almost constantly on the move, either burrowing in the ground, using rock walls as shields, or even blasting flames. Shovel Knight needs to be quick in order to take this guy down effectively. But once you figure out his patterns, he's one of the easier bosses to take out, especially in their second encounter. Treasure Knight. Treasure Knight has a really neat old-school scuba suit as his armor. He travels the seas in search for treasure to feed his greed. He takes on Shovel Knight with an array of attacks that launch either his anchor or himself across the screen. He also manages to use trick treasure boxes to steal your gems. Shovel Knight needs to use his skills to dodge Treasure Knight's attacks. Once he's able to figure out his patterns, Treasure Knight is another of the easier knights to take out in their second battle. Plague Knight. Plague Knight is a massive fan favorite who uses his devious and disastrous alchemy experiments for his attacks. He has a great design based off the old plague masks that were worn in the 17th and 18th century that hid aromatic items in the beaks to protect the doctors from the air and stench. His sporadic and random movements make him one of the more destructive Order of No Quarter bosses, and it is important to isolate him quickly before he can cause too much damage in the Battle Royal. Plague Knight also talks like Michael Jackson. Propeller Knight. The smooth-talking Propeller Knight commands the almost impenetrable flying machine. He is definitely one of the trickier bosses and has a variety of unique and methodical attacks. Shovel Knight needs to be very cautious of the wind forces and also has to overpower the Knight of Flight. This knight is suave, daring, and one of Shovel Knight's friendlier rivals. Learning to take him down efficiently is a must when taking out the entire Order of No Quarter. Phantom Striker. Arguably the most powerful of the Wandering Travelers, the Phantom Striker challenges opponents he feels are worthy of battle. His electrical prowess is quite mighty, and our shovel-wielding hero needs to be careful not to take this foe lightly. Shovel Knight's best option is to pogo off of this warrior's head strategically to dodge the electricity and eventually wear him down. There is an underlying respect that this foe gives to Shovel Knight, who at this point in the quest has earned it. Mr. Hat. Mr. Hat. This character is found around the Armored Outpost as a merchant of fine hats. He ranks so high on this list because of his unique ability to gain new attacks depending on what hat or helmet he is wearing. His potential is almost limitless. He goes a little crazy when seeing Shovel Knight's helmet and wants it for himself. His battle is really neat because his attacks change dramatically depending on what hat he is wearing. It is a pretty easy battle, but this character is great. Enchantress. The Enchantress is a really well done villain, especially because of her sleek design and the mystery behind her character. She looks like the video game counterpart of Disney's Maleficent from Sleeping Beauty, which is not a bad thing. Her battle is very intense with a breakable floor that leads only to death. She blasts her magic mercilessly at our favorite knight and will do anything to take him out, which includes destroying her own tower. It is interesting Shovel Knight goes in full force, especially after what our good friend the Black Knight had implied about this villain. Specter Knight. Specter Knight is the boss of this game's creepy stage, the Lich Yard. He is the only undead member of the Order of No Quarter who is apparently a great warrior in life, as well as a great warrior as a phantom in death. He joins the Enchantress to stay animated. He is the most blunt out of all the knights, in a way to psychologically torment his opponents, which is shown when he tells Shovel Knight that Shield Knight is dead right before their first battle. His skill with a scythe makes him formidable, as well as his techniques for raising the dead and creating an absence of light. Shovel Knight needs to adapt to these distractions to fight effectively. King Knight. King Knight so high on the list? Hell yes, King Knight is a badass. I don't care who disagrees. Sure, he's one of the easiest bosses in the game. Sure, he isn't really a king, but who cares? This guy has charisma and style. He looks awesome, and he even complements Shovel Knight's awesome gold armor that makes you do cool flips when you rescue him after defeating the entire Order of No Quarter. This guy loves the grandeur of single combat and appreciates skill and flair. Woo! The Lord of Pridemore Keep's personality launched him into second place. The best. Black Knight. The Black Knight is the ultimate rival to Shovel Knight, who faces him on 3 separate occasions. He is this game's Proto-Man, Gary Oak, or Knuckles, with a phenomenal design and great fighting techniques that rival our shovel-wielding heroes. However, that isn't why he's number 1. The Black Knight is actually an extremely complex character. He serves no lord and has an undeniable heart, especially when discussing the Enchantress. It is implied that he knew the secrets behind the Enchantress the whole time. We don't know the love triangle between the Black Knight, Shield Knight, and Shovel Knight, but there's clearly a lot of tension. He wants to make sure that Shield Knight is protected and spends the game battling Shovel Knight to make sure he is up to the task, and he holds resentment for Shovel Knight because of Shield Knight's fate. The Yacht Club team did a fantastic job creating such a complex character in a role that can easily be cliché. This rival does a great job of being interesting and gives the opportunity to be layered out in the future. And that's why he's the best. Thank you all very much for watching this Shovel Knight episode of From Worst to Best. If you liked it, please like and subscribe and comment and talk to me. Be sure to watch my other From Worst to Best videos. I have a few on the Legend of Zelda series and one on Castlevania on the NES. So keep your eyes peeled for more videos. Thanks so much, guys.